Thank you very much. Councillors, members of senior staff, the clergy, the press and citizens of Temora Shire, warm welcome to the Temora Shire Council meeting for October. I declare the meeting open and advise that this meeting is being recorded and will be placed on Temora Shire Council's website for public information. And all present today are reminded that whilst speaking that we are agreeing pardon me, to our view and comments being recorded and published. We're also reminded that if or when we're speaking that we're of course to be respectful to others and use the appropriate language. Temora Shire Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures during this council meeting, which of course doesn't happen here at Temora Shire. And I do warmly welcome to the chamber representative of the Temora Christian Leaders Group, Mrs. Heather Grinter, who is going to lead us in our opening prayer. And thank you, Mrs. Grinter.
Heavenly Father, we thank you that we can still pray to you openly in this country. And we thank you that we have come to you today asking for guidance in this meeting, guidance and wisdom to know what to do for our town and its surrounds. We thank you, Lord God, for the ability of those councillors here. And we pray for each and every one that they might, in respectful ways, continue in harmony to have and ensure this meeting goes well. We pray for every part of this meeting in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Mrs. Grinter, and we do salute you, of course, your many years caring for our community as a nursing sister at Temora District Hospital, so it is lovely to have you in the chamber. Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies? I think we have a full team. Excellent. Thank you. Councillors, any declaration of any interest at this time? Councillor McLaren.
Item 3.1 in Assets and Ops, please.
Thank you. That's noted. Thanks, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Judd.
Letter of correspondence. Declare an interest, please.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Councillor Judd. Thank you. No further declarations at this time. Thank Councillor Slay.
One of the
Councillor Slay.
My apologies. One of the letters that has been sent in regarding funding.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Slay. No further declarations at this time. If not, then let's proceed to confirmation of the minutes of the September meeting of Temora Shire Council. Is someone prepared to move that they be received as true and correct? Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Oliver moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Matters arising, please, Mr. General Manager.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Let's now go, councillors, to Mayoral Minute for the month of October. You should have a copy on your desks. Number one, I place on record a very warm congratulations to the citizens of Temora Shire for the manner in which we have handled COVID during these past 19 months. I acknowledge it has been very challenging for many of us. However, the manner in which we have done our best to adapt to the relevant New South Wales public health orders of the day has been most appreciated. Whilst thanking everyone for their patience, kindness and perseverance, I remind us all to please continue to do the right thing. Please remember that the shopkeepers and businesses and their staff are doing their very best to implement the law as it applies to them. I congratulate those who have been able to have the COVID vaccinations and also remind us all that having the jab is a personal choice and is not mandated by any level of government. There is light at the end of the tunnel, with us enjoying some form of normality from the 1st of December. Let's look forward to coming together even more as a Shire community so we can get on with further enhancing this place that we love. Number two, this afternoon's meeting will be the last proper one for this current Temora Shire Council. As Council are aware, as from November the 5th, Temora Shire Council goes into caretaker mode. Council will still meet in November. We're still permitted to make decisions, however, none relating to the appointment or reappointment of the Council's General Manager, enter into any contract or undertaking involving an expenditure or receipt by the Council of amount equal to or greater than $150,000, or determine a controversial development application. With council elections to take place on Saturday the 4th of December, it will certainly be a very busy period for both councillors and staff. Nominations for candidates to be a councillor will be open Monday the 25th of October and closing at 12 noon on the 3rd of November. They can be submitted online or at our council office. And I encourage anyone who genuinely wishes to enhance and further strengthen Temora Shire to please consider nominating. It is an exciting time for our Shire, and we all have a responsibility to do our fair share to keep it going. Number 3, Council will note the recent changes in leadership within the New South Wales Government. We extend our sincere thanks to former Premier, the Honourable Gladys Berejiklian, and the former Deputy Premier, the Honourable John Barilaro. They have given 100% to their respective roles under some trying circumstances in recent times. As a result of their leadership, rural and regional local government have finally received our fair share of grant funding. Council wishes both Ms Berejiklian and Mr Barilaro all the very best as they commence their new chapter. And there's a recommendation there, councillors, that we do write to them and thank them. Number 4, Council places on record our congratulations to newly elected Premier of New South Wales, the Honourable Dominic Perrottet MP, and the new Deputy Premier, the Honourable Paul Toole MP. Temora Shire will continue to work beside the government and the opposition to ensure we receive the best outcomes possible. And again, there's a recommendation there to write to both the Premier and the Deputy. Number 5, I advise Council that the current President of Local Government New South Wales, Councillor Linda Scott, will be formally retiring as President at the Local Government New South Wales online conference on the 29th of November. Councillor Scott has been the President for 2 terms now, 2 by 2 year terms, and has done an outstanding job as our advocate. Councillor Scott's genuine efforts in communicating and lobbying for a better deal for the communities across New South Wales have been most appreciated. I've deeply appreciated Councillor Scott's support of Temora Shire and the wider Riverina region. I also value our genuine friendship. It is pleasing to see Councillor Scott will still be serving as a councillor on Sydney City and also being the President of our Australian Local Government Association. This year we'll be electing a new President, which will come from the rural and regional areas. I am aware of 2 nominations for President, they being Mayor Phyllis Miller, OAM of Forbes Shire, and Mayor Daria Turley, AM of Broken Hill City. I've had a meeting with both candidates and they have an obvious passion for the advancement of rural and regional communities. And Temora Shire will of course work with whoever our new President will be. And councillors, there is a further nomination that I'm aware of is the former Mayor of Albury City, Councillor Alice Glacken, as President, and I understand a gentleman, councillor from near Port Macquarie, is it Lake Macquarie, Councillor Luke. His surname eludes me, but I've only found those out today. So there are 4 candidates for that position. And there's a recommendation there for councillors to consider. But I do mean those words warmly and sincerely, councillors and staff and members of the gallery. Councillor Scott has been an outstanding President of Local Government New South Wales. Number 6, as a member of the New South Wales Country Mayors Association Executive, I advise Council I will be attending the annual general meeting to be held on Friday the 5th of November at Local Government New South Wales headquarters. This will be the first occasion I'll have been to Sydney for several months. However, it is most important to be there. The New South Wales Country Mayors Association Executive is scheduled to meet with the new Premier and the Deputy Premier to discuss issues of importance to our member councils. I have arranged, however, with our Temora District Hospital Manager, Mrs Wendy Skidmore, for her to carry out a COVID test on my return on that Friday evening, and will, of course, self-isolate until I receive a negative result. And finally, I draw Council's attention to the recent announcement of Mr Scott Reardon, OAM, of his retirement from athletics. His achievements are exceptional, including earning both a gold and silver medal at the London and Rio de Janeiro Games, among many other achievements. Mr Reardon has been an inspiration to many of us, and we know he will continue to do so as he pursues his next goals. On behalf of councillors, staff and our entire Shire community, we say well done and thank you to Mr Reardon. And councillors, I'll move the mayoral minute recommendations and the remainder of the report be noted. Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Moved and seconded. So further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Council, let's now go to our business paper, and we go over to page 11, the Assets and Operations Committee report. And Councillor, I beg your pardon, Councillor McLaren is taking her leave, declaring her interest, leaving the chamber. Thank you, Councillor McLaren. I go to the Chairman of the Assets and Operations Committee, Councillor Winkie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just move that the reports be received.
Thanks very much, Councillor Winkie. Seconded, Councillor Oliver. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillor Winkie, do you have anything you wish to highlight or comment on?
I think as written, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Winkie. Councillors, any comments or questions in relation to the Assets and Operations Committee report? If not, is someone prepared to move the report and the recommendations contained therein, please? Thank you, the Deputy Mayor. Seconded, Councillor Winkie. Moved and seconded that the report and recommendations from the Assets and Operations Committee be approved. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you, Councillor Slave. You would. I've run out of ink. Run out of ink. Have you got a spare red one or blue? Like. Thank you, Councillor Slay. Councillor McLaren, thank you for resuming your seat. The Council have determined to adopt the Assets and Operations Committee report and its recommendations in their entirety. Thank you. Councillors, let's now proceed over to page 34, the Economic Development Visitations Committee report, and I'm the chairman of that committee. Is someone prepared to move that that report be received, please? Thank you, Councillor Judd. Councillor Smith. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, are there any comments or questions? I think obviously the committee, I remember, were certainly very, very impressed that there is being proposed a master plan for Lakes and Teneriffe, because we know the success, as Councillor McLaren I'm sure would well know, the master plan of Nixon Park, and how that assists us greatly in terms of trying to apply and receive grant funds. So the principle of that was fine, but there was certainly some debate about certain aspects of the report. I go to Councillor Oliver. Hang on.
No one's on this. None of this are operating.
Oh,
Now, does the everything work here? Yep.
Here's mine.
So Councillor Winky's works, Councillor McLaren, Councillor Judd, Councillor Ryan, the Deputy Mayor. We'll just get our IT genius on the job. We don't have any musical interlude, do we? On a Sunday.
That's like something else.
So, councillors, what I would ask for those that, whilst we get our IT officer to come down to attempt to rectify the problem, which is beyond anyone's control, I would ask Councillor Oliver, Councillor Slade, Councillor Smith, if you're able to project your voices like you're on the stage or in church or some such, the council would be most grateful. Or, for that matter, you could share a microphone. So I'm now going to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I notice in the business papers there's a notice of motion later to deal with this particular part of the report. It's just the holiday cabins don't sit all that well with me at our lake. I fear that perhaps if the lake dries up, nobody's going to want to reside beside an empty lake. It'll probably end up like Bull Garden, which is on Burrow Jump, which is in the upper waters, and it's pretty much not a derelict caravan park, but it's not utilised as much as it could. I don't believe that council should be guiding this meeting, so perhaps I'll just leave that and we'll deal with it later in the meeting with that notice of motion.
Thanks, Councillor Oliver. Well, obviously, councillors, if the what's contained in the notice of motion, if that isn't removed in this report, then obviously it has another chance to consider in relation to the notice of motion. However, if it's removed from this particular recommendation, then obviously the notice of motion becomes irrelevant. So, okay, I go to the Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd take on board what Councillor Oliver said, but I don't think at this stage is the time to be ruling things in and ruling things out. I think this is where we look at, what the concept possibly could be, to get some feedback from the community, and then go from there. I really don't think now that we should be putting limits on what can be involved and what can't be. That can come later perhaps if it needs to be, but at this stage I think it needs to be an open plan and see what comes out of it, what might fit and how it all might fit together. So I'm really against making conditions on where the master plan, what it can look at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Now, other comments, Councillor. Look, from the Economic Development Committee meeting, that all of the committee, of course, were very, very pleased about the concept of a master plan, and that certainly goes without saying. However, it just is up to council in terms of if they want to have some sort of framework or certain restrictions. That's a matter for council. I take the point of the Deputy Mayor as well, in terms of not wanting to potentially hog-tie future council or discussions, but again, I suppose we've got to deal with what's before us, and that, of course, is we're looking at this proposal that is before us. So, Councillor McLaren.
I'm happy to move the motion and discuss it further in the business papers with the notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor McLaren, you're moving the Economic Development Visitations Committee report and its recommendations. Thank you. Seconder for the motion. Councillor Oliver, seconding the motion. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. That can go to the... Thank you very much. Councillors, let's now proceed over to page 40, the Council's Aerodrome Users Committee report, and Councillor Judd is the chairman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Judd.
I'll move that.
Councillor Judd.
Move the report be received.
Thank you. Councillor Judd has moved the report be received. Is there a second for the motion, please? Thank you. Councillor Reinhold moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillor Judd, do you have any items you wish to particularly highlight to Council, please?
Yeah, I've been involved with the Aerodrome Users Committee for many, many years, but I'm still takes mind getting around a lot of these designations and procedures that are coming through on to be looked at, and I'm also, I must say, I'm very pleased our engineering manager, even though he knew nothing when he started on this task, he's been able to sort of get on top of it a bit as well, so congratulations to him. But I might just, I'll turn to the manager in a minute, but I might mention the aerobatic championships item, which is on page 61. Applications come in, and but Temora has hosted the aerobatic championships before, and we were told at the other night of the meeting that the Aero Club at the time helped the championships put it on, and they were saying there was a lot of work setting it up. When you have aerobatics, you have to set up what they call an aerobatic box, which is on the western side of the hangars and all that. And at the time they said, well, they had to cart all this heavy stuff out in the middle of crops and everything like that. And it sort of, anyway, they just said, for this, if they go ahead this time, Aero Club is sort of not up to it this time to help out. So that's why they've requested that if the application goes through, the aerobatic people have to find their own marshals to set up the box and that. So, and that's my comment on that. And I might hand over to the manager to, have you got any other items on the first couple? Any comments?
Thanks very much, Councillor Judd. Thank you. Does the Engineering Services Manager have anything he wishes to add in relation to any aspects of the Aerodrome Users Report?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Not in particular, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. Yeah, it was a good meeting. Everybody's getting along, and there's some real technical, pretty tough decisions, and everybody seems to be cooperating, so it's good.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. Thank you, Mr Manager, and it's great to also see the report on page 60 in terms of the aerodrome works. I think that's very informative, obviously, for the committee, but also for council. So I think, even though weather's been certainly had a negative effect in terms of delaying the project in this regard, it's still tracking okay, Councillor Judd. I think you'd agree.
Yeah, the manager informed us that there's still underlying moisture under the aerodrome where they want to work, and it could take some weeks, even without further rain, before they can tackle it. So it's surprising. Like we've had a good wet year, but it's going to take a while to get on to jobs like this. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Just a question to Councillor Judd or the engineer. On page 70, we had business without notice from Mr King, where it says council to install a no parking sign on airside of emergency exit gate. Now, usually if there's an action to be had, there'll be a text in bold underneath. But that, yeah, I'm just not sure where that sits. Is that a suggestion, or as the engineer, do you have a... Thank you, engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. It may have been a suggestion, but it's a very, very, very minor request that makes 100% sense, and we'll be definitely doing it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. So yeah, it just might be helpful if we, like we usually do, just underneath if it's something that is going to happen or if it's going to be recommended to happen, if we just have that in bold, that would be great. Thank you. Anything further in relation to the Airdrie Users Committee report? If not, it's Councillor Judd.
I'm happy to move the report
you.
be adopted with recommendations.
Thank you. So Councillor Judd has moved that way. Second, Councillor Winkie, that the Airdrie Users Committee report and recommendations be adopted. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Very good. Councillors, let's now proceed to page 71. In terms of delegates' reports, do we have any delegates' reports, please? Councillor Slay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During the past month, I've had the privilege of attending naturalisation ceremonies, not once, not twice, but thrice. But marvellous, absolutely marvellous. And I have my own reasons for being a naturalisation junkie, but I'd have to say that these various ceremonies each gave a different reason why we should be very, very happy and very proud that these people are joining us as Australian citizens. And I congratulate the Mayor on the way in which the fairly formal presentation can be humanised, and it was humanised very, very well.
Thank you.
We saw some magnificent examples of that, but particularly, I think, without sort of denigrating any of the others, what was wonderful was to watch one of the applicants, when it came time to declare her loyalty, she was handed a piece of paper with the the declaration of loyalty on it, and she took it gratefully, put it down in front of her, and with a head held high, said the declaration herself. She obviously knew it. She obviously meant what it said. So I just think that if you've got, if like me, you've got a bit of spare time, you've got an opportunity to go to one of these naturalisation ceremonies, I can assure you it's worth it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Slay, and thank you for making the time to attend. I know councillors, everyone's busy and you can only do so much, but Councillor Slay, you've just reminded me of those, the special privilege that the Mayor has to be able to carry out that role on behalf of council and the community and of course Australia. And that particular lady that we naturalised, what was also very, very heartwarming, besides knowing and reciting the pledge and knowing the anthem off by heart, what was also very, very heartwarming and very moving is her vocal, what would I say? The manner in which that she expressed how proud she was to be part of the Temora Shire community, and the warm terms in which she said that was it was very special, and it's lovely to even reflect on it right now, to be frank, and it is indeed a privilege. So thank you, Councillor Slay, for reminding us of those very, very special naturalisations. I know, Councillor Judd, I'm sure during your several years as Mayor, it is very heartwarming and a privilege. Councillor Judd.
It's certainly one of the honours of being Mayor, and I remember way back first thing when I think Councillor Spears had to take some leave, and just before Australia Day, and I was thrown straight into it, and straight into there was a naturalisation at Australia Day, and it was full on from the start. So yeah.
You're right there. And Councillor Slay, I do think, of course, how grateful we are, and you've acknowledged it, and I have too, that our Executive Assistant, Mrs. Rands, she does an outstanding job. I think we've naturalised, since I've been Mayor, was something, I think Mrs. Rands about, 90 citizens, and it's just been a real privilege, and each one is just as heartwarming as the next, to be quite frank. The most that we did at one time, of course, was one we had 13 that we did at the Town Hall Theatre, and again that was over 40. Oh, I beg your pardon. Wow. Anyway, they're special. Thanks, Councillor Slay. Further delegates' reports. Councillor, just a few things that had the pleasure, and I'm sure Councillor Judd would know this later, as some other councillors may. I was invited to visit with Mrs. Rita Martin, who celebrated her, Mrs. Rita Rogers, I beg your pardon, celebrating her 101st birthday, and she's a resident of Greenstone and just remarkable. And she was reflecting that she said she was born in Temora. She said at a hospital near Carlton House. Now, I'm not sure whether there was one or whether it was indeed Carlton House, but nevertheless, she said she remembers being taken home on horse and sulky. Part of the secret to her longevity, she's suggesting, was a glass of red at 9 o'clock every night, and she just was just fantastic to spend some time with her and her son, and just let her know on behalf of council and our community what a privilege it is to have her as part of this place, and so I just wanted to share that with you, councillors. The REROC annual general meeting was to be Friday the 29th of October. That has been pushed back to Friday the 12th of November. So that will be held at the Wagga Country Club, and the reason why that it was pushed back is, of course, to enable us to have more in attendance, because we like to invite, the various state MPs and former chairmen and so on. So that annual meeting will proceed at that date, and constitutionally it still has to proceed. And just to advise council also that we signed last Friday at a meeting in Coolum, our Chief Executive Officer, Mrs. Julie Briggs, a contract for a further 12 months and the option to renew. And obviously the REROC board will certainly, the future boards will have to consider time after Mrs. Briggs. Now, of course, that's not suggesting she's leaving in the short term. However, she certainly has flagged that she's not going to be in the role forever, which sometimes we can inadvertently take for granted. And having served as our CEO since 1997, Mr. General Manager, that's a fairly lengthy time, but she certainly does an outstanding job, and also in a role as CEO of the Riverina JO. Which leads me to the next one, the Riverina JO, that the review, as the Deputy Mayor would be aware, that the review into JOs was done, completed, and there was supposed to be a report released to the JO Chairman's network, which we're going to be meeting via Zoom now in 2 weeks' time. And I did talk to the Minister's Senior Advisor, Mr. Wilkie, who apologised that it has taken so long, and he indicated it would be released prior to the end of the year. And I said, well, I certainly hope that that will not mean at Christmas time, because I don't think that would be, fair or appropriate. And he just said, no, we're avoiding December. So look, councillors, I don't know. To say that we're frustrated would be an understatement. To say that we're extremely disappointed at the delay in releasing the report would be an understatement. So I don't know if the Deputy Mayor is the JO Board member for Temora Shire, whether you have anything you wish to add. No. Okay. Councillors, and the only other thing is I don't know whether Councillor Slay or the Director of Administration and Finance have any remarks in relation to the Riverina Regional Library saga that has been taking place in recent weeks. The Director of Administration Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the General Manager and I attended a meeting a week or so ago at Wagga just to discuss some options for moving forward. And the working party that has been formed to work on that is coming up with some options which they are yet to present back to us. So we'll keep you informed when we hear back.
So would you like to perhaps draw to Council's attention as to why we're at this place? Or remind Council?
Yeah, thank you. So this is following the notice from Wagga City Council that they do not intend to renew take part in the Riverina Regional Library under the current agreement because it expires at the 30th of June 2022. So yeah, they won't, is that the wording? Not participating in the agreement in its current form. Yeah.
They are not renewing the agreement. That's the...
In its current form.
Okay, so thank you for that. Councillor Slater, do you have anything you wanted to add besides I can read you like a book?
This is being published, being broadcast.
Yes, yes. Thank you. The General Manager, do you have anything to add?
No, only probably watch this space because...
General Manager?
No, because just watch this space as far as what happens. There's all sorts of discussions occurring and options to come back to the Riverina Regional Library Board.
Yeah, thank you. So obviously yourselves and Councillor Slowe will be across that as the weeks unfold. So thank you for that, but frankly, to suggest that we're disappointed with Wagga City, again, would be an understatement, and we'll leave it at that for the moment. Councillors, and just finally, I wanted to inform you, I was only made aware today, as well, Temora Shire Council only made aware today of that we have a new mayor of our sister city in Randwick City. We have a new mayor, and the new mayor is Mayor Dylan Parker, and he was a former senior advisor to, or he may still be, Mr General Manager, to the Honourable Michael Daly, MP, as part of the New South Wales opposition. So we've reached out today to formally, well, I suppose informally congratulate him, acknowledge him. I have met him on 2 occasions, and he really is a nice fellow. But it was a bit of a shock, councillors, because obviously this is only a 3-month tenure that the mayor will have, and of course the immediate past mayor Danny said, again, an outstanding individual. I think all of you along the way have met him or seen him, and he is just a thorough gentleman of the highest order. And one of the lovely things that he's done, besides coming out and visiting with us and spending time with us, was initiating as part of the annual budget for Randwick City, is a scholarship through the Temora District Education Fund in the name of our sister city, Randwick City, and that is in perpetuity, which is fantastic, and that is thanks to former Mayor Danny said. So our warm and good wishes, and of course Council will be writing to both former Mayor Councillor Said and the current new Mayor, of course, in Councillor Dylan Parker. So that is all that I had to share with you. No further delegates' reports. If not, let's proceed over to page 72, the Mayor's report for the month of September. There's a recommendation over on page 75 that Council notes the report. Thank you, Councillor Winky. Councillor Oliver moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, a motion receiving staff reports, please. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, let's proceed over to page 77, the General Manager's Report, 10.1, the calendar of events.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As read, councillors.
Thank you. There's just one exciting, Councillor Judd.
Oh, just a question to the General Manager.
Councillor Judd.
November the 9th, the committee day, the tour of Airy Park. Could we, any idea of giving me a time when it might be starting at all? Or?
Thank you. Councillor Judd, the General Manager.
Yes, I understand the engineering technical manager and engineering works manager are going to be talking to you about a program out there, and once that's developed, we'll have a time frame out.
Thank you. Councillor Judd.
Thank you.
You'll be ready for us?
Yes. And I must say that we have secured the world famous scones by Councillor Reinhold for the day.
Oh, well done.
No pressure.
No, they are. Thank you, Councillor Judd. And they are. I can vouch for Councillor Reinhold's scones. They are delicious, and she's very generous with butter as well, which I fondly remember. So thank you very much, councillors. There's just one item that, if we can please add to that, is of course Friday, December the 10th, for the Teabeg Christmas Fair. I know we'll be considering an item of correspondence a little later, but that, and then of course Saturday the 10th, the Temora Christian Leaders carols in the park at Gloucester Park. So those events I would think will be supported with much anticipation and enthusiasm. So if those two could be included, the Deputy Mayor. Oh, thank you. That's a good pickup. And that's, yes, changed to the Friday the 12th. Thank you. So with those amendments, councillors, there is a recommendation that council note the report with those amendments and additions. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Oliver moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, over to page 78, 10.2, the seals, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And there is one additional seal to add to that, and that's Sonic Healthcare, their lease agreement.
Thank you. And Sonic Healthcare, as I understand it, is Douglas Hanley Moyer. Thank you. Councillor McLaren? Oh, you're not moving? I am moving. Oh, you are, right. Right. You can be careful. Moved by Councillor McLaren that council seal is affixed to those documents, including the renewal of the lease of Sonic Healthcare. Sonic Healthcare, not Masonic. Councillor Oliver?
Was that second?
No. Sorry. So Councillor McLaren's moved it. Seconded, Councillor Oliver. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Let's go over to page 79, 10.3, role of Mayor during the election period. The General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. As councillors, you'd be aware that with changes after the 2016 elections, the Mayor no longer holds the office until the new election, after the new election. So there has been a workaround though, which is being proposed here, that you can delegate those functions, well, to anyone, but I'm suggesting the existing Mayor, from the period from, that's under section 377, and that'd be delegating the role of the Mayor is in accordance with section 226 of the Local Government Act, for the period from the election until the declaration of the polls, or until the first, sorry, not declaration of the polls, until the first council meeting of the new term and the election of the new Mayor.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Councillors, comments, thoughts, views? Certainly know this has been a major cause for concern across, well, whether it's LGNSW, Country Mayors Association, JOs, ROCs, individual councils that have just been frankly amazed that that the Office of Local Government would allow that to take place, and particularly when they wrote to all of those bodies mentioned previously, advising that this current practice is what has always been, and of course that is not the case at all. So unfortunately, they need to check check their history. So, Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Given what bureaucrats have done in recent times, nothing amazes me with these people, but I will move the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Seconder for the motion, the Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. I declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors, very much for your confidence, and we'll do our best again. And so, again, thank you. I go over to page 81, 10.4, the Temora Arts Centre, the General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. As read, councillors, there was a workshop on the 20th of September where a plan of management or draft plan of management was considered. There were quite a few changes made to that document as a result of that workshop. And we're going to, we'll be talking, we've talked to the major stakeholders in relation to that. They're fairly happy with most of the contents of it. This report's come up because of two things. Firstly, we need to establish the Arts Centre Advisory Committee, which is 355 committee, so that will require a resolution of council. And also there was modifications required for the fees and charges. That there were a couple of areas that weren't included and there were some inconsistencies. So again, recommend that be put in and advertised as changes to the fees and charges. The changes that are being made are basically to the Artists in Residence program. And also casual use. There was no casual use fee applicable to that. And there's also an outdoor space, which is a cheaper space, but it's available if they wish to use the outdoor area.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Councillors, do you have any comments or questions in relation to the report? I do thank the councillors and senior staff that were able to attend this delegation that we met of all groups, arts and culture in Temora Shire. I think it was a most informative meeting for council, and I think what's before us is a reasonable Yes. Thank you. So, councillors, there is a recommendation, page 84, for you to consider. The Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I might have lost it a bit, but to the General Manager, is the advisory committee the one that's going to be responsible for the finance going back to council, or is that the original old TADVAC or something? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Judd.
No,
the General Manager.
The advisory committee is purely a mechanism for the users of the facility to get information back to council as a group. So they would recommend on operational changes or capital works investments and so on, grant funding, all that type of stuff. They'll be the on-ground, if you like, people who make the recommendations back to council.
Still not very clear though, who works the finances, you know, so TADVAC's still involved with the licence or finding their rents and that?
So the General Manager.
No, council will do all that. There'll be a staff member around there. The responsibility for the hiring of the spaces, the taking of funds and all that sort of thing will be done through that position. It is truly an advisory committee, similar to the Area Park Community Advisory Committee, discuss the issues and make recommendations back to council.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Judd. Sorry, councillors, I do beg your pardon. I was referring to a different session in relation to arts and culture. That was to do with the Temora Memorial Town Hall. So just in case you're wondering where I was going. So, councillors, yes, before us the Temora Arts Centre. There is recommendations there on page 84 for you to consider. The Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to move the recommendation.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor has moved the recommendation. Second, Councillor McLaren.
No, not a second, just a comment.
No, hang on. No, thank you. I'll get a seconder first. Councillor Smith, thank you, has seconded the motion. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question on how the membership will be determined. Is there a nomination process, or will call for community members to nominate themselves, or how will that be resolved?
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. The General Manager.
Yes, it will be a nomination process. The determination on it will have to be made by council, like it is with all our committees. But we obviously want as broad a basis as possible. It says 9 people. What council has done in the past is where there's, if 12 people put their name in and they've all got an interest in the facility, council has the right to increase that.
Councillor McLaren.
A further question, would that be the same for interested councillors if there's more than one?
Thank you. The General Manager.
Yes.
Thank you. So, councillors, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Smith have moved the recommendation, page 84. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Nothing of an urgent late nature from the General Manager?
No, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go over to page 85, the Engineering Services Department report, 11.1, Mandamar Forest Road, the engineer. The engineer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Hang on, the engineer.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. The report is as written. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Well, Mr Engineer, I know that our Works Manager is the author of the report, but it certainly doesn't seem to be as clear as perhaps what most of the reports that we receive are. So the ultimate upshot of the understanding is that there is funding for the Mandamar Forest Road segment 1 and 2, bitumen reseal of 130,000.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Listen, I'll explain a little bit and then I'll answer any questions. So basically, why this report's been presented is we were successful in round 1 of fixing local roads to seal the Mandamar Forest Road, and subsequent to attracting that funding, there were some requests from residents in the area to repair or rehabilitate a 1.3 kilometre section in the middle that was rough. That came back to council, and council said that it could be done subject to grant funding. We applied for the second round of fixing local roads and were unsuccessful, and then we applied for the third round of fixing local roads and were unsuccessful again. And we're now at the stage where the resealing of Mandamar Forest Road is the only outstanding job we have of the round 1 projects, and it's already due for completion. It was supposed to be complete in October. And so what we're asking is, does council want us to seal the entire length, including the 1.3 kilometre section, or do we leave the 1.3 kilometre gap with the view that council will commit to renewing that at a future stage in the next sort of 5 years?
Thank you. And by doing that extra 1.3, it would cost approximately 325,000,
That's correct.
which is not budgeted.
I don't think it's, no, it's not budgeted at this stage, but it could go to budget estimates.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Councillor Judd, do you have a comment? Councillor Judd.
Yeah, it's just a difficult one. That's, the engineer sort of told us before that if we go ahead and put the seal on it, well, that virtually finishes any chance of doing the rehab work in the future, you know, but just like to ask the manager, is he confident we can get a rehab grant in the future or not?
Thank you, Councillor Judd. The engineer.
My view would be we won't get a grant. If we want to do it, we'll have to fund it. And I guess, you know, historically we haven't rehabilitated sections of road based on roughness. We've rehabilitated sections of road based on failure or, you know, excessive maintenance required to, you know, maintain. So this probably hasn't been on our radar, but absolutely acknowledge that, you know, that section that has been identified is quite rough. But yeah, I think, and if we reseal it, it's not the end of the road. We can go and rehab it in 10 years, but, you know, the seal life, you know, if we seal it, you're talking 20 years life. And, you know, to seal 1.3 Ks, I'm just going to do this really quickly. So you're talking about 35 grand. That's what the cost to seal is, and that's expected to last 20 years. So if we reseal it now and spend the 35,000 and go and rehab it in 2 years, well, you know, you've done your 35,000.
Thank you, Mr. Engineer. Councillor Judd, do you have anything further?
No, as I said, it's a difficult one, and it's probably one of the worst sections of a Class 2 road in our shire, I think, you know, for bumpiness and things like that. And I'm tended to hang fire and see if we can find the funds in the future. And that's my opinion.
Thanks, Councillor Judd. Councillor Winky.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'd have to agree with Councillor Judd. I think it is a difficult one, but we don't want to go throwing good money after bad. So it's, and I think it's one of those things that we're going to have to just sit on and try and get further funding for if we possibly can, or we'll work it into our budget.
Thanks, Councillor Winky. Councillor Oliver, was your... No? It's all right. Slight twitch. The Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. So, just to understand this, if we don't go ahead, what happens to $130,000? Is it just gets handed back, or?
The engineer.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm not suggesting we don't go ahead. The question mark is whether we leave that 1.3 kilometre section out of the resealing. You know, my view would be, if we're likely to have it funded by council in the next 5 years, we don't reseal that section. If funding's not likely in the next 5 years, I would probably reseal it, and if we get the funding, all good. You know, the other, I guess, implication is with this funding is it's currently grant funded, and what we don't, you know, say we come in under budget by the 35,000, we hand that back to the state government. That doesn't mean we still should seal the road, I don't think. I think we need, you know, if we leave the gap, we should be committing to do the work in a timely manner.
Thank you. Thank you. Now go to Councillor McLaren.
Just a question for the manager. Would that section of road ordinarily come up as a priority for council to fund in the next 5 years anyway? Is it that tiered road?
Thank you. The manager.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, my view is probably not in the next 5. You know, there's other higher, you know, say Howard's Road is one off the top of my head that, you know, I'd say it's in the 5 to 10 year maybe. Like once we get through the widenings and once we rehabilitate the worst of the sealed roads, you know, it would then, you know, come up, but that could be some time. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, councillors, we're in your hands, and I know it is not an easy one. Councillor, Got excited. The Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Mayor, I don't know which way to go here, so I'm of the opinion that, you know, the engineer's the best one to put up a recommendation for, and I'd go off what he recommends, I would think.
And would you like to repeat what he recommended?
No,
Thank you.
no, thanks.
Mr Deputy Mayor, the manager.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I guess my view would be I think we should seal it and seal the 1.3 kilometres, and then we put the rehab section in Council's Forward Works program. Because my view would be, on a priority basis, it's going to be 5 years plus before it'll get funded out of Council's own funds. I don't think we'll attract grant funds. It just doesn't stack up. So I think we seal it, we spend the money, and then, you know, if I think the funding will become available out of our own funds in the 5 to 10 year time frame.
Thank you. So I see our administrative team, director and assistant, are crafting or trying to capture the engineer's words for council to consider, which is that council seal the 1.3 kilometre section of Mandamar Forest Road and refer the rehabilitation section in council's forward estimates. And of course that 1.3 is fully funded as it stands. Well, it's has 100. Yes. So we don't have to find that money. No. Thank you, Councillor Judd.
Yeah, I'm happy to move that way.
Right. So Councillor Judd, the Deputy Mayor, second that motion. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor McLaren.
I just wondered whether we shouldn't put in, it was resolved that council seal the entire bitumen reseal of like point 1 above. See how it's got complete the entire bitumen reseal, and further that the rehabilitated section be referred to the forward estimates.
So I'm struggling to hear you, Councillor McLaren.
I was just wondering whether we shouldn't include the words that we seal the entire bitumen reseal as planned for Mandamar Forest Road sections 1 and 2, and further that we refer to the rehabilitation section to the forward estimates. So we're going to do the whole lot in entirety now, and then we're going to refer the 1.3 to budget estimates for the future.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McLaren. The mover and seconder, are you happy with that? Thank you. We got there. That's fine. We just got to get it right.
Take that 1.3 kilometre out.
Yep. The entire seal, the entire.
Does that make sense, Bob?
No.
Yeah, so you want to put above, yeah. Council complete.
Yes.
Complete the entire bitumen reseal. Happy with that?
And further.
Yeah, segments 1 and 2, or?
Yes, we probably should do that. And further, refer the rehabilitation section to council's forward estimates. Yes. I think we need to. The mover and seconder, you'd like that included? Yeah. Yep. Thank you. So, we have on your screens a motion that we think reflects what Councillor Judd and the Deputy Mayor have moved, that Council complete the entire bitumen reseal of Mandamar Forest Road, segment 1 and 2, and further refer the 1.3 kilometre rehabilitation section to Council's forward estimates. So the mover and second are happy? Thank you. Further discussion? If not, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Mr Engineer, is there any further late urgent items for your departmental report?
No, Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you. We understand that obviously all of our departments are under the pump, but obviously the engineering section is, and we are extremely grateful to you and your team in relation to the work being undertaken. Let's go over to page 86. One of our premier departments, of course, is the Environmental Services Department, and they're kicking goals behind the scenes. And Mr. Director,
Mr. Mayor.
yeah, that's right. No, thank you, Mr. Director, Environmental Services, and again to you and your team. We thank you for. It's just full on at the moment. Of course, in your department and council and our community are grateful for you and your team, and we thank everyone's patience as well, because it's, you know, we do have to show that patience and grace, and so thank you. Let's go over to page 87, a fine department of Temora Shire Council Administration Finance, and 13.1, the Temora Library Opening Hours Review. The Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report's as written. Happy to take any question.
Thank you. The Director. Thank you. Councillors, any comments or questions in relation to 13.1? The Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it appears that the review from the patrons of the library are quite happy to see it open earlier, so I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Thank you. So the Deputy Mayor is moving the recommendation, page 87. Councillor Slay, moved and seconded. Thank you. A discussion, Councillor Oliver? No? No, it's very tricky. Thank you. Just in discussion on the motion, the weekend opening hours, are we aware of what those times are, the Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's just open on Saturday morning from 10 till 12.
Okay, so from 10 till 12 Saturday morning. Yep. Thank you. And that obviously works well also.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you. Councillors, you have a motion moved by the Deputy Mayor and second Councillor Slay that we adopt the recommendation that you see before you, that the opening hours from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays become a permanent change with no change to the Saturday opening hours, which are from 10 till 12 and closed on the Sunday. Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Is there anything of an urgent, late nature from the Director, please?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you very much. Councillors, just in time. We go over to page 88, correspondence. 14.1, the CWA Area Park branch, and Councillor Judd is declaring a non-pecuniary interest, however is leaving the chamber, which has been noted. And of course Councillor Judd's wife, I understand, is the secretary of the branch. So I defer to the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this is a normal donation that council make annually, given the community nature of the CWA and the role it plays in the area park community.
Thank you. Councillor Winky.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move the recommendation.
Thank you. So you move that we make that donation back to the area park branch of CWA. Thank you. Councillor Winky. Councillor Oliver moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thanks, Councillor Oliver. I'm just waiting for... here it comes. Welcome back to the Chamber, Councillor Judd. During your temporary absence, Council have considered the item correspondence 14.1, and I am pleased to inform you that Council have resolved to donate the 25% back to the CWA Area Park branch, and the motion was carried unanimously.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. Councillors, we go over to page 91, 14.2, the Sister City Committee, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As you can see, councillors, they are requesting assistance for a gift for the Zumazaki community to celebrate the 30th anniversary, as discussed with ex-councillor Spears earlier.
It's hard to get out of that habit, isn't it? Thank you, Mr General Manager. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Is this a financial commitment up to $2,600 or is it that's it?
Thank you, Councillor. My understanding, General Manager may correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding was that they're asking for Council to allocate a total of $2,600 for the Sister City Committee to come up with appropriate gifts from local artisans. The General Manager?
That's correct.
Right,
which I think means up to $2,600, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. So that would mean if the gift cost, say for argument's sake, $1,000, they'd return the surplus.
Well, being a council committee, I understood, Councillor Oliver, that they would, if council allocated up to the $2,600, that they would expend what they felt was appropriate. They could do that up to that value, and if it was under that value, then they wouldn't have to do a thing. Yeah. So, Councillor Oliver.
And the other question I have, this doesn't come any, like 355 committees aren't to give donations, so this is a gift, not a donation, is that?
Well, my understanding, Councillor Oliver, is that it could come out of some funds, and I think the General Manager and the Director of Administration and Finance was suggesting some different pots that Council might like to consider. So I'll go to the General Manager and then I'll go back to Councillor Smith.
Yes, we actually have, if you notice in our reserves, we have a $2,100 there for Zumazaki, which we'd intend to use, and then the residual, if there is any, would come out of community services budget.
Thank you.
Which at the moment I would add is quite underspent because of the COVID situation.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Smith.
Quite a few years ago, when we were in drought, Umazaki raised money and sent the money out here, and it wasn't a large amount of money, but I think we used it for education scholarships, Umazaki scholarships, and I thought it was very well spent. And I just think it's a little bit of a give back. Thank you.
No, thanks very much, Councillor Smith. That's a great reminder for many of us, and particularly some of the newly elected, that were elected 5 and a bit years ago. It is a reminder that relationship obviously still exists, and of course, you know, Zumazaki is just an important sister city, but as are Randwick City and the others. But obviously, this committee want to look at the 30th anniversary of our relationship, which obviously means a great deal to our former mayor and colleague. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, I know last time I built the little box for them, and it was a donation, so they may not need all this money. But if it's there they might use it for different type of artists. Anyway.
Yep, no.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. You certainly were extremely generous. I'll go to the Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I think this is 30 years is a reasonable length of time for these sorts of things to last. And I think it's worth recognising, and I'm quite happy to move that Council set aside $2,600 for the to the project.
Thank you. So the Deputy Mayor has moved that way. Second to Councillor Oliver. Thank you. Moved and seconded. And of course, Council are aware of where those funds would come from. So it won't come from our community donations budget, but obviously the Uzumizaki revote and community services for the balance. Yeah. Thank you. So moved and seconded. Further discussion. Councillor Judd.
As Mr Spears said earlier, it's just a shame that since 2011 and the tsunami that things have just been on hold ever since then, and now with COVID, you know, things are still on hold. And I think hopefully we can get over these disasters and get back to normal one day. So
Exactly right, Councillor Judd. I remember when I was Mr Spears' deputy mayor and the former mayor of Uzumizaki passed away, and then Mayor Spears come to see me at the shop and said, right, I can't go to the funeral in Japan, can you please attend? And of course I thought, gee whiz, I've never been overseas, but I reflected and I rang him back the next day and said, yes, I would love to. We'll arrange things in the shop, etc., as long as I have a chaperone to look after me, and because I'm not a family-friendly chaperone. Of course, he said, oh, excellent, that's fantastic. Right, so you've got all your passport? And I said, passport? What passport? So I did go and get a passport, Councillor Judd, and I haven't used it, but I did get one. That's right. Anyway, it's been moved and seconded, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Oliver, that we accede to the request from Mr Spears and his committee of up to $2,600. So if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Let's go over to page 93, 14.3, Temora High School, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the next four are applications by the schools for assistance for their presentation day, which has been Council's practice to give $200 to each school annually. 4 schools have applied, and it may be okay just to do them all as one.
Thank you. So, councillors, Councillor Reinhold, would you like?
I move that we.
So you'd like to move that council accede to the sponsorship requests on 14.3, 14.4, 14.5 and 14.6.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. Is Councillor Slay seconded? Thank you. Councillor Slay has seconded the motion. Discussion. What did Councillor Slay say? Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I didn't hear. Councillor Smith? Sorry, Councillor Smith has seconded the motion. Thank you, Councillor Smith. And Councillor Slay has left the chamber declaring an interest in relation to Sanan's Central School, given his position on the school board, which has been noted. So moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Let's now proceed over to page 101, 14.7, Temora Ambulance Museum, the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this is from the manager of the Bundawara Centre in relation to the Ambulance Museum development. They are applying for funds to develop a business case, plans and whatever for that project to proceed down the track. But part of it is that they must be able to substantiate council's entitlement to possession of the site, which you may recall that Mr Spears actually bought a neighbouring block of land out of his own funds with the view that in time council may require it for expansion of the Royal Museum. What he's actually after is a legal agreement which says that in the event that funding is procured for the project, for the full project, council will purchase the land off him at the cost that it was paid for.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. And that was always the understanding and the agreement, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was, yes.
Thank you. Okay, councillors. So effectively, the recommendation, Mr. General Manager, is that you're seeking is that council draw up a formal deed of agreement for transfer of title and the cost of transferring the title.
It's pretty well spelled out. If the resolution should be that the council solicitor be engaged to draw up a formal deed of agreement to transfer the title from Mr. Spears to council for the said sum in the event of a successful application, providing the funds required to construct the proposed building.
Okay, so that's on page 102. So, so council solicitor.
So at this stage, we're not committing ourselves to any funding. It will only be activated if funds to build the entire building are gained.
Thank you. So, councillors, we're just getting this recommendation. And do we need the and further? That council seek advice from the Historical Society as to what their involvement in this project will be. Is that? Pardon? On page 102.
No, that's not required.
That's not required. Okay, so there is a recommendation that we have on the screen for council to consider, or if there is an alternate view. Councillor McLaren.
I'd like where it says the said sum, if we could put the sum referred to in Council Resolution number 131/2018, because that was the resolution carried in November 2018 to the agreed sum. So that clarifies what the said sum is.
Yep. Yep.
Resolution number 131/2018.
Yes, it appears on the page 102. Yeah.
And further, I note that Mr. Spears has been paying the rates over the years since he purchased that, and he requests that council cover the legal costs in drawing up this deed of agreement. So in lieu of his continuing to pay rates on that block, I think we should agree to his request to cover the cost of transferring the title if and when it is applicable to be transferred.
Okay.
Which is in his further paragraph.
Yes, whether we have that as a separate resolution. This is very untidy, I'm just going to say from the outset. But the General Manager.
I think it's silent in the resolution. If it says, if that goes as is, it was a result that council solicitors be engaged. The assumption would be that council would meet the cost of that. It wouldn't be a huge cost. I'm thinking probably $400 or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Judd.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think the motion would read better if it was wording was reversed and start with the words in the event of a successful application, then run on that action then be taken. So
Yes, that probably would be flow a lot better. So the General Manager, we need your advice on this one, please.
What we suggest? Where are you suggesting that go, Councillor Judd?
At the start. Is what was resolved that in the event of a successful application, council solicitors be engaged to draw up a formal deed of agreement to transfer the title of the property from Mr Bill Spears to council for the sum referred to in Council Resolution 131-2018, providing the funds required to construct the proposed building.
No, that won't work. It actually defeats the intent of the motion. What that's saying is that until we get a successful application, we won't be engaging the solicitors, but the solicitors are required prior to the application being made.
Okay, so Mr General Manager, what's your advice in relation to this recommendation? That it would be helpful if, we had have had one on page 101, but what's your advice, please?
I think the wording as it was, that we engage the solicitors to do a formal deed of agreement to transfer the title. If and in the event of a successful application, provided funds are required to construct the proposed building. So it's saying that we have a formal deed of agreement in place to transfer it if the funds are available, or if the grant is successful, then the land be transferred at that price.
Does that motion that's on the screen capture what you've articulated?
I believe it does.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, there is a recommendation that has been crafted that we finally got there. Councillor Judd.
I'm happy to move it.
Thank you. Councillor Judd, Councillor Reinhold moved and seconded. Is there further discussion, please? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. Contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Let's go over to page 103, 14.8, the Temora Christian Leaders, the General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. As you can see there, the combined church services on the 24th of October was cancelled, but they're now seeking permission to hold the Christmas carols in the park at Gloucester Park on the 11th of December.
Thank you. It'll be a very, very busy time in Temora Shire with the Christmas fair on the Friday the 10th of December and the carols in the park scheduled for the Saturday evening. I reckon they'll be both very warmly supported if, of course, this event gets the tick from this council, so I don't wish to preempt. So, councillors, you have a request there for you to consider. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that we accede to their request.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver has moved that way. Seconded the Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. And I acknowledge the presence in the chamber, of course, of the Chairman of the Temora Christian Leaders, Pastor Patricia Morris. So I'm sure you'll be delighted with that motion that's just been passed unanimously. Thank you. Council, as we proceed to page 105, 14.9, the Temora High School, the General Manager.
Yeah, thank you. This council, they are seeking some chairs and tables from the Town Hall for an event, their graduation, which is going to be held at the Temora Aviation Museum, but they don't have enough chairs and tables out there. You will note that they will collect, set up and return to Temora Shire at no cost to us, so for your consideration.
Thanks, Mr General Manager. Councillor Smith.
Move that way.
So, Councillor Smith, you move that we accede to the request. Thank you. Councillor Slay moved and seconded. Further discussion? If, assuming, of course, if there was to be inadvertently any damage that they would, yep, thank you. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillors, you will note that there are three items of late correspondence that are deemed urgent. And the first one is 14.10, event application TBEG, the General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, apologies for this being late. However, with COVID and whether they were still going to hold the event or whatever, it did take a while.
The Director of Environmental Services declaring an interest in relation to the matter as the Deputy Chairman of TBEG, which of course now is not a council committee but rather an incorporated association. Thank you, the General Manager.
Yes, and this is an event we have supported each year. And as you can see, the total cost there is $2,400 for the road closure and associated hire.
Thanks, Mr General Manager. I've just reminded myself that Councillor Judd and I are actually patrons of TBEG. We were re-elected just recently, Councillor Judd, as being past presidents of that organisation. So we're declaring obviously a non-pecuniary, but I'm also a financial member. Non-pecuniary. Thank you. So Councillor Judd, you're noting that. Thank you. Councillors, this is obviously the delay. The General Manager did advise earlier today that obviously TBEG were regretful that it is late, but obviously the COVID restrictions, they just didn't know which way to jump, whether they're going to have something or not. So they did apologise for the delay. The Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This would come under 50% ruling of council, I guess.
Well, that's what I would have thought.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Director of Administration and Finance.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We actually have a budget allocation to support this event each year. So, yeah, it's not a matter of a rebate back to TBEG. There's actually a council budget allocation.
So that's under the old system, though, when they were a council committee. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you. So, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I think the 50% rule probably applies now. So I move that council support TBEG's application to the tune of 50%.
Thanks.
Of the total cost.
Thanks very much, Mr Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we have to
You, sorry.
Sorry?
Is there a seconder for the motion?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Councillor Smith, thank you. Moved and seconded. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we have to be consistent with this 50% thing. I think it would look a bit odd if this was let go through and others weren't. So
yeah,
I fully support the motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Oliver. Yes, you're quite right. We've got to be consistent, even though this is going to just liven up this community, and it would just be fantastic to come together if this is passed. Really and truly will be. If there's no further discussion, I will. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The only thing that does worry me with this 50% thing, I'm wondering whether they'll double their application and get what they want in any event. Just being suspicious, that's all, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
I'm sure that they will be playing with a straight bat, and so it's been moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded Councillor Smith, that Council agree, obviously, to support the event to the tune of a donation back up to 50%. Further discussion, the General Manager.
Not just a comment, Mr Mayor, and that I can see where council's coming with the 50%, but that was generally relating to a facility hire, and I guess council's got to look to see its role in promotion of the town and promotion of business, and I'm just some of this. By enforcing the 50% rule, it's going to cripple a few organisations, that's all.
Well, thank you, Mr General Manager, but again, Council have also got to look at our bottom line as well. And I think it seems like we've got to keep reminding us of our budget situation. I mean, what you're saying, I understand completely, but, you know, we've got to show some restraint too sometimes. Thank you. Councillor McLaren.
I share the same sentiments as the General Manager. I think that this is part of our role as economic development for our town, and I think we should be promoting this retail fair festival to promote business, especially after coming out of a COVID environment. And I think we should be waiving this, even if it comes under the portfolio of economic development. I think this is a very important event, and I think TBEG is a very important organisation. Even though it's not a 355 anymore, I still think it does a valuable, like a Chamber of Commerce role for our town, and I think we should be very wary about charging them. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McLaren. Well, I think, I'm sure you'd acknowledge, I don't think anybody, the mover or the seconder or other speakers, are certainly not suggesting for a moment that it's not an important event. Firstly, and that we acknowledge the importance of the organisation. Secondly, and they've done some outstanding work and continue to do so, that's for sure. And I think Council is extremely generous to TBEG, particularly given, I think it's the $8,000 a year that we donate in terms of towards their executive officer services. So I think that with that support, coupled with the motion that's before us about a donation back of 50%, I would have thought is extremely generous, I would have thought. But thank you very much. Councillor Reinhold.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in defence of TBEG, they are also our Promotions and Visitation Committee. They took on that when we chopped up the 355 committees. So they've taken on more than just the business groups, so take that into consideration. And also, we didn't have the Tea Light event, so there's been other events that we put in applications for and asked for council support, but they didn't go ahead, so we haven't paid out any money. So I agree with Councillor McLaren that we go whole hog on this, please.
So, Councillor Reinhold, you sit on the executive?
Yes.
Right, so did you have your interest declared?
Well, I'm a council representative.
But it's an incorporated body.
But I'm still representing council. As a delegate.
As a delegate, yes, but I think we do have to note it though, don't we? The General Manager? As in just noting it, not vacating the chamber. So the General Manager?
Yeah, you can notice as a non-pecuniary interest to me because she is a duly appointed council delegate.
Yep, no, that's quite right.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Councillor Reinhold. Councillors, you have a motion before you that's been moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded Councillor Smith that a donation back of 50% to TBEG occur. So if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. So can I ask again, all those of that opinion, please raise your hands. All those to the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Indeed. Let's now proceed to 14.12, the Red Bear Theatre. The General... Oh, sorry, who have I got to get back in? The Director, sorry. Councillor Winky, thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Hang on. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Not Red Bear, Area Park one. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Judd. In relation to Mr Director of Environmental Services, in relation to 14.10, the event application TBEG Christmas Fair for 2021, Council resolved to support the event by way of a donation back up to 50% of the total cost, and I'm sure, coupled with the 8,000 that we give for the executive officer, that I'm sure that TBEG will be most grateful. So thank you, Mr. Director. Let's now go to 14.11. event application. The General Manager, and Councillor Judd, of course, has left the chamber declaring that interest. The General Manager.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is going to be an interesting one because this is a community event run by a group at Area Park, the Area Park Community Projects, very similar in nature to the TBEG application. I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Councillors, you have a request there from the Area Park Projects Committee. Now, they are obviously not a council committee. No. Thank you. And there is a submission there for council to consider. The Deputy Mayor.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'll do the same way that we don't have 50% of the costs of running it.
Thank you. The Deputy Mayor has moved that way that we donate up to 50%. The Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Smith. Second the motion. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Councillor Reinhold.
I'm going to say that I would like to support them 100%. So I'll throw that in the mix.
So you're not moving an amendment, Councillor Reinhold, at this stage?
Well, I don't think I'll be supported, but no, I'll just put in my objection.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Reinhold. Councillor McLaren.
I just wondered what the relative situation was when Temora has their Christmas tree. Is that...
We don't have a ceremony.
So it's just the carols in the park?
It's just the carols in the park, yep.
And is this their equivalent carols?
I'm not sure. I just know it's a Christmas tree event that I understand is well supported.
Because if it was their carol service as well with the whole festival, I would feel that council should support an equivalent celebration in Area Park as Temora for consistency.
Well, it's not costing anything though for the carols of council though, is it?
Well, there's
Mr.
still set
General
up and
Manager.
stage and costs associated with it, isn't there?
Well, Mr. General Manager, what's the situation, please, that you're understanding?
The carols in the park, so there's no charge for that. The only cost may be if they're going to use the stage, but we haven't had any application for that as yet.
So I understand that they won't be using the stage, is the indication I'm getting from the chairman in the gallery. Oh, sorry, I thought you were shaking your head.
Because we've had to organise it very quickly, we're just going to have a very low-key one this year. It won't be the big traditional one we normally have.
Yep.
So because we had to cancel the 24th, and then the COVID restrictions lift on the 1st of December, we normally have something on the 2nd of Saturday. But rather than have a combined church service on the 24th, we thought let's come together as combined churches and still put on a low-key family Christmas celebration. So it's going to be not as we normally have it every other year, probably more an old-fashioned style. Get together and sing carols, family with a few items. So yeah, so we haven't looked any further than that at the moment.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. So there won't be any requirement from council other than obviously approving the use in Gloucester Park. Thank you. Councillor McLaren.
A further question. Can this be 50% funded by donation, and they also have the tip fees at Area Park? Is that allocated to events like this? Could this be covered by that fund?
That's, I think, thanks, Councillor McLaren. I understood the Projects Committee, they recommend where that money is expended, don't they, the General Manager?
No, not the Projects Committee. That was a source of some concern out there. So it's the Advisory Committee who make those recommendations, and it's done on a generally about an annual basis.
Thanks, Councillor McLaren. Councillors, I think that, and I know that obviously the Deputy Mayor and the Councillor Smith and others that support the previous motion, I mean, just remember, these are not councillors that are saying these events aren't great, because all of us know that these events are crucially important. However, we've also got to be mindful of our bottom line, and I have to say I congratulate Council on showing that restraint, because we have to do it. We have to do it. And I strongly believe that, and it takes courage to do it, and I believe ultimately our community will appreciate it and understand it. So, thank you very much. Councillor, is there any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillors, let's now go over to page 14.12. Sorry? Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back to the Chamber, Councillor Judd. During your temporary absence, 14.11, the Airy Park Christmas tree event was considered by Council, and Council have resolved to donate 50% of the applicable fees back to the Airy Park Projects Committee. Thank you, Councillor Judd. Now, let's go to 14.12, the Red Bear Theatre sponsorship, and the General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's as read, the start back of theatre at the Town Hall, and the first production is Macbeth on the 18th to 20th, and they are seeking sponsorship from Council as they are with other businesses. I should mention that this Red Bear Theatre is, while it's a private business, is a not-for-profit organisation. They're purely with the intent of reviving theatre in Temora.
Thanks very much, Mr. General Manager. Councillors, your wish, I did understand. Look, our business has sponsored Red Bear Theatre, and you'll note that it is our Young Citizen of the Year. I did understand that it was a private business, but I thank the General Manager for advising us that it is not for profit. So, councillors, we're in your hands. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm tossing between, definitely not diamond, I'm tossing up between silver and gold. Perhaps we split the difference, maybe, I don't know. But, I'm probably, no, I don't know, I'll let some others.
Thanks, Councillor. I would have thought that, like any organisation, they'd be grateful for anything. That is my view. The Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think this is maybe a private organisation that's, as the General Manager says, non-for-profit. And it's just starting off its first production, so I think it's worth Council supporting at least this first time. And yeah, I think we're quite happy with the $150, I think, from my point of view.
So you're moving that way?
I'll move that way, yes.
Thank you. So the Deputy Mayor has moved that Council donates $150 to Red Bear Theatre. Seconded, Councillor Oliver. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Councillor McLaren.
Can I move an amendment that we support them to a gold level sponsorship of $300, please?
So you're moving an amendment to the motion that it be gold sponsorship of $300. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Judd. Moved and seconded. Discussion on the amendment. Councillor McLaren.
Look, I think this is a fantastic initiative, amateur theatre based in Temora. It encourages art and culture and a lot of volunteer hours going into this, and I think we need to give it as much encouragement as we can.
Thank you. You could argue that the original motion is 50% of that 300. But anyway, thank you. Councillor Judd is the seconder of the amendment. Do you have anything you'd like to... No? Sorry, Councillor Judd.
We certainly support the motion, and it's good to see that this group has started off, and I think we should be encouraging them as much as we can. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Judd. The Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, look, I'm not very concerned either way. I'm quite happy, if everyone else is happy with $300, so am I. So if the seconder of Councillor Oliver's, I'm quite happy to
withdraw. So, thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Councillor Oliver, do you wish to withdraw from seconding the motion, or do you wish to stick? Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, do you wish to stick? Thank you. The mover and seconder of the amendment, you wish to stick? Okay, thank you. Councillors, I think it's great, obviously, that we want to support this group. That's number one, so that's great. So therefore, Councillor, I'm going to put the amendment first, and that is on the motion of Councillor McLaren and Councillor Judd that Council donates $300 as a gold sponsor to Red Bear Theatre. So I'll put the amendment first. All those of that opinion, please raise your hands. All those to the contrary, declare the amendment carried. Therefore becomes the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much, councillors. No further late items of correspondence, Mr General Manager?
No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillors, let's now go to page 107, where we are in receipt of notices of motion, and the first one, of course, that we've received is from Councillor McLaren, and I'll defer to Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd first like to preface this following discussion by saying I have the utmost respect for all my fellow councillors and staff of council. This is something I've been thinking about this policy for the last couple of months, and it's just some amendments I'd like to put up for discussion that I feel would improve the policy and reduce the risk for council moving forward. Yeah. The first clause relates to the time frame of this. I'll first read out my notes just to put it in context. The Temora Shire Council's Development Infrastructure Deferred Payment Policy is an innovative scheme to kickstart development projects that would otherwise remain dormant due to lack of funding. The scheme is designed to give projects the initial access to capital that would enable the creation of economic assets that are able to be leveraged and sold in the housing market. Council is not a bank, and the purpose of the scheme is not intended to provide long-term funding for developers. Once the asset value has been created, the applicant is able to approach commercial funding sources with an asset that is able to provide security to raise further funding to complete any remaining stages of a development. Council needs to minimise risk by limiting exposure to the housing market for longer than necessary. Further, Council needs to be mindful of exposing future councils to long-term financial commitments. Council and senior staff are in a special fiduciary relationship with Council, and in this capacity have a duty not to profit from their position as well as not putting their interests in conflict with Council's. To this end, I have three amendments to move to the policy for discussion, and the first one relates to the time frame of repayment. In the original policy, it had the time frame for repayment of the deferred infrastructure payment is a maximum of 10 years from the date of the signing of the agreement or the completed sale of all lots proposed to be delivered by the subject application, whichever is sooner. And I'm proposing to amend this to the time frame for repayment of the deferred infrastructure payment is a maximum of 5 years from the date of signing the agreement or the completed sale of all lots proposed to be delivered by the subject application, whichever is sooner. I just felt that committing a council to 10 years funding over a second term of a separate council isn't as responsible. I think we should contain it to 5 years, and the burden's on the developer once they've created these assets. Our job's done once those values are created, and I feel that the kickstart's been given and we should be repaid our money. So would you like to consider the first motion first, or shall I go through the other two, Mr Mayor?
Well, we probably should. Well, you're moving the three amendments, aren't you? So therefore, I think that you're better off going through the three, then moving those as a block amendment.
Okay, fine.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren.
the second amendment is to insert a clause that only one development infrastructure deferred payment be granted per applicant, irrespective of whether development is staged or not. Again, this reflects my view that the first stage of a development's already been undertaken, a value has been created, and therefore our job has been done to kickstart the project, and further funding as a stage development is no longer council's responsibility, I feel. The third amendment is to, and this is purely personal, and I accept there'll be differences of opinion, where an applicant involves councillors or council staff who are directly involved with the assessment process, the application will be referred to an external assessment process. I'd like to replace that with the clause that councillors and council staff be excluded from the development infrastructure deferred payment scheme. That just reflects my view that I believe that we shouldn't be borrowing off our own organisation, and that we have a duty to put the interests of the community ahead of ourselves. And yeah, that's just my personal opinion. So I put that up for discussion and move that those three amendments be made to the Development Infrastructure Deferred Payment Policy.
Thank you very much, Councillor McLaren. Is there a seconder for the motion, please?
Yes, seconder.
Councillor Judd. So Councillor Judd has seconded the motion of Councillor McLaren. I will say, Councillor, before or in discussion, I do thank Councillor McLaren for taking the time to ring on several occasions to discuss these issues, because obviously it has been weighing on Councillor McLaren's mind for some time, and it is appropriate that if you feel strongly on something, then you present your views. And of course, she's done that in those three motions. So I do appreciate that Councillor McLaren was fearful of not wanting to upset anybody and offend anybody, and I assured her that I think all of us are tough and reasonable people, that we would know that you would not mean any disrespect of any kind to anybody, whether they be councillors, staff, or in fact potential developers or developers themselves. So I do thank you, Councillor McLaren, for reaching out. Councillors, you have a motion before you. Discussion. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the amendments. However, we've already sort of set the goalposts in place. Has a developer taken up this as yet, or?
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Yes, that's a good point. I think that to remind that Councillor McLaren, if just say, for example, this motion was to pass, the notice of motion, that wouldn't be retrospective. So that would be from, if this was passed this day forward, until another council may wish to tweak again the policy, if they wish to, yeah. So, yeah. So, Councillor Oliver? Right, so does that answer your question, Councillor Oliver?
Yes, it does. But then, what if another developer comes along and says, you've done it for this bloke, well, why can't you do it for me? I mean, it sort of puts us in a bit of a difficult situation, that's all.
Well, thanks, Councillor Oliver. Look, I can understand that, but at the end of the day, it's like any policy or rule, they can be amended and changed as the governing bodies, in this case council, that so determines, if that's what this council wants to do. But again, we can review any policy and make amendments if we wish to, or if we're happy with them, we leave them the same. But there is always that risk, Councillor Oliver, you're right. Thank you. I'll now go, the Deputy Mayor, you next, in the queue.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, the first two clauses I don't have too many issues with, the amendments, but the third one I'm just concerned about, trying to attract people to council as councillors. It's hard enough as this, and you need people who are going to be, progressive and innovative and a bit of go in them and so forth, and they're the same sort of people who are going to want to do developments and things like that. So it might be just throwing another hurdle in the way of people putting their hand up to stand for council and so forth. And I think providing council's got all the right checks and balances in place, so that if there was a staff member or councillor who wanted to do some sort of a development and applied, that it's all above board, it's all checked over by an external body or whatever. I just don't see what the problem is going to be. I know there's a perception, but people have got to get over perceptions. It's what happens in real life, what the reality is. So, yeah, I'm not too keen on seeing a third clause being changed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. But you support, you're saying, the 1 and 2 of the 3
Yes,
in the motion.
Certainly the first clause. The second one, maybe there's some sort of arguments that there might be times when somebody might be allowed to have a second go at it if their first development's only a small one, and then they go from there to a larger one or something like that. So, I mean, there could be issues where someone could come back for a second bite of the cherry, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Councillor Slay, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the dominant point that I see in this documentation is council is not a bank. And that's precisely the point. I mean, there are ways of... Well, sorry, I'll go back. You're a bit worried that this whole thing, through Mr. Chairman, that this whole thing, councillor, could deter potential councillors. As far as I'm concerned, well, that's all right. There are other deterrents for general councillors as well, such as the time that we have meetings, the frequency with which we have meetings, and so on. But we don't constantly say, oh, well, I'm afraid we might lose on this potential councillor, so we'd better change our rules. We say, now we have our rules, let us go out to that councillor and try to convince, or that potential councillor, and try to convince him or her that even though it's a bit tough on you, we'd like you to be a councillor. So I'm afraid your first case doesn't really hold up as far as I'm concerned, I don't think. But that's a personal opinion. But I'm constantly coming back to, or in my own mind, the idea that we are not a bank. We really are not there to be used, particularly at a time when the bank situation is such as it is. Banks are looking for clients. Banks are looking for action. Banks are looking for some people to do precisely what we're prepared to do. That is, come in and say, we want to borrow. But people say, no, I won't go to the bank because that costs a bit too much money. I'll go to the Shire Council. But I wouldn't be happy as a Shire Councillor. I wouldn't be happy as a council ratepayer to have the situation where our role changes to being that of a bank. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Slay. Councillor Slay, would you mind just adjusting that water bottle, please, so I can see the red? Thank you very much. Just moving it to the side, sorry. Thank you. I now go to Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, to some extent, support the Deputy Mayor's comments, but really, as it is at the moment, it probably doesn't pass the pub test. I mean, whereas if you go this with the amendment, I think it really just isolates all councillors and staff, I think. But I do support some of the Deputy's comments though, but but to me it just doesn't pass that pub test, so thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Oliver. Councillors, I must say I analysed this like all of you have, and certainly clauses 1 and 2 I personally do support its entirety. I think I said to you, Councillor McLaren, at the time that I was struggling with number 3 and trying to weigh up what I could hear, what I could feel you as councillors would say. And the first thing I thought of is this: could it be argued, as a councillor and as a staff member, am I being discriminated against? Because again, if I wanted to to do something like that, why shouldn't I have that opportunity? But then, of course, I take the point also that that councillors of the day and, of course, staff, particularly senior staff, we are privileged in privileged positions, and that can potentially give us an advantage. But having said that, we did cover that also in the original policy, whereby which we didn't put a lot of rigour around, I might admit on reflection, but that we would have councillors and council staff, that's all staff, current staff and current councillors, referred to an external assessment process. So I believe that could be some more rigour around that, I thought would be helpful. Oh, not helpful, would be necessary. But yes, it is not an easy one at all. But thank you. I'll go to Councillor McLaren.
I think the fact that it's discriminatory is entirely the point. I feel that it's almost a pecuniary benefit in some respects. I feel that we as councillors and staff for this organisation are in a very special role in this community as custodians and with the interests of the community as our primary focus. And in the same way that if somebody wants to donate $1,000 to my mother-in-law and $1,000 to me, she may be able to accept it from a developer, but I can't because I'm a councillor. And I know it's not fair. I should be able to take it just like my mother-in-law, but I can't. And I accept that coming onto council, and that's where I'm coming from in this. I feel our role is particularly special, and it's almost a trustee position. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that, Councillor McLaren. I go now to the General Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to clarify with Councillor McLaren the issue of who are councillors and staff, and does it also relate to the Code of Conduct's definition of councillors and staff, as in councillors, siblings, parents, spouses, children?
If you're looking,
Councillor McLaren.
There's a like provision in the Corporations Act where it refers to senior staff as those who are able to influence the financial position of council and affect decisions. So I'm kind of more focusing on the senior roles akin to councillors and those advising councillors. So that's the situation in the corporations law, that it does define who a fiduciary is, and it's a. So I would have a similar view.
So, Councillor McLaren, just to clarify, when in your suggestion, what's before us in terms of motion, that councillors and council staff, are you suggesting that should now be?
No, I actually am comfortable with it incorporating all of as an expanded definition, because I think it's too messy to try and chop and change. But that's where I'm drawing my inspiration from. From that sector, because I feel it's a similar relationship we have.
No, thanks very much, Councillor McLaren. The General Manager.
I suppose my concern, Mr. Mayor, is relating to perception, which is what we're talking about here. A spouse doing a development and gaining the benefit of it would be perceived in very similar terms to the senior staff or councillor who is involved in the development.
Thank you. That's a good point, Mr. General Manager. So I don't know whether Councillor McLaren and Councillor Judd agree with that, and may want to expand that to councillors and their wives and husbands. Beg pardon? Related parties seems to be the word. Councillor McCarr, I haven't heard from Councillor Winky. Thank you, Councillor Winky.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for the General Manager. So we go back to the original clause in Section 3. Are you suggesting that the application as it stands in that wording that's there now would be just councillors and council staff to be assessed by outside assessment process?
Thank you. The General Manager?
Still be involved with...
My interpretation, it would be councillors, senior staff and those declared in the relatable disclosures as well. So that's parents, children, siblings, spouses, and everyone else.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Winky. Councillor McLaren.
With that view, I could amend that clause 3 to include the definition within the Code of Conduct as related parties.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Councillor Judd, are you happy with that inclusion?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have that noted. So that's in relation to number point 3 of the motion.
So you're accepting clauses 1 and 2 as they are?
So number 1 and 2 will be left as they are in the motion. The mover and second are happy to do that. But yeah, number 3 of the motion.
So the resolution will be the question. So clauses 1 and 2 will be accepted as presented?
Yes.
Something along those lines?
Well, they're listed there.
So Anne has to put the resolution in, that's all.
Yep. Well, there you can see there as it's articulated on page 108 to insert clauses in 1 and 2. So thank you for your patience, councillors.
As defined in the Code of Conduct?
Yeah, and related parties.
Oh. And related parties. Yes, now, and related parties. And related parties. That's defined in the Code of Conduct.
So should that be the Office of Local Government and Council's Code of Conduct? Yeah. So can we just have the in there move and second have it just the council's Code of Conduct, please? So just important we get this right. Yes. So, Councillor McLaren and Councillor Judd, are you happy with what is on your screen, please?
Yes.
Thank you. You are happy. So, councillors, is there further discussion on, and it is important, remember this is basically brand new policy. Yes, we have workshopped it at length. Yes, we have discussed it at length. However, it's one that, like any policy, we can amend as the council of the day believe it should be. But this obviously is a significant policy for council. So, the Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can see this having this clause 3, change the amendment to clause 3, can have the potential to cause some, dispute and conflict within families of councils and staff. It's just going far too far. It's it's unjust, I reckon. It's really going to put pressure on, someone standing for council if they've got, their son or something's a builder or developer or something like that. Like I just don't agree with one at all. I don't think it's right.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I go to Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the Deputy. I think it excludes far too many people. I would be happy to see this point number 3, just put a bit more rigour around it.
As far as the external
review, because
yes.
I think, as Councillor Sinclair said, it's just opens up I've got 3 nephews that are builders and developers, and And I have a son and daughter-in-law who are looking to build a house soon too. So, I mean, it's just, I don't think it's, I mean, it probably will eliminate a lot of people putting their hand up for council because they're just too well tied up. So I do agree wholeheartedly with the deputy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I go to Councillor Wink. If you wish to speak, can you please remember to click your button, please? Thank you.
I'm just wondering, Mr Mayor, whether we should be putting up clause 1 and 2 for a start and looking at clause 3 as a separate clause, a separate motion.
Thanks, Councillor Winky. Not sure about that one. Mr General Manager, your views on that, I suppose you could.
You can do that if you wish to, Mr Mayor.
Okay, well, I'm in the hands of Councillor McLaren and Councillor Judd if you wish to amend what is before us in terms of just considering clauses 1 and 2, because obviously there seems to be consensus around the chamber in relation to that. Councillor McLaren.
I'd be happy to pass clauses 1 and 2 initially and then have a further discussion on clause 3.
Thank you. Councillor Judd, you're happy with that? Thank you. So can we amend? We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor McLaren and Councillor Judd, you're seeing on your screens, the motion now reads that Council accepts clause 1 and clause 2 as presented in the notice of motion. Happy with the way that reads? Thank you. Is there further discussion on that motion that's before you? And that is just in relation to clauses 1 and 2. So if no further discussion, I'm going to put the motion. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare that motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We now go, Councillor McLaren, to number 3. Councillor McLaren.
I'm happy to hear more discussion from my fellow councillors.
Thank you.
On clause 3.
Right, so you're not moving?
Oh, I'm moving.
Okay, well, we need you to move that, please. Sorry, Councillor Oliver, can you? Thank you. Councillor McLaren?
Yes, I'll move that resolution, thanks.
So you're moving what is there on page 108, that councillors and council staff be excluded from the Developer Infrastructure Deferred Payment Scheme. You don't wish to add that other bit in relation to
No, I'm quite
Council's
happy
code?
to move clauses 1 and 2 first.
We've already done that.
Oh, I apologise, sorry.
Sorry, yeah. Very busy. So now we're dealing with clause 3 in relation to councillors and council staff.
I'm actually quite happy with the first version that I put in the report.
Which is that councillors and council staff be excluded from the Development Infrastructure Deferred Payment Scheme.
Yeah.
So you're happy to move that?
Yeah, I understand the ramifications of the related party in a small community. So,
But you're happy to, as written there?
Yeah.
Thank you. So Councillor McLaren has moved that as per on page 108, that councillors and council staff be excluded from the Development Infrastructure Deferred Payment Scheme. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor McLaren. Seconded, Councillor Judd. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Now, discussion. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm still not happy with that as it is. I just really think that if we put more rigour in around councillors and staff with an external assessment process, I'd be happy with that. The previous amendment, the way it was, would seriously impact on my applying to run for council on December 4. I wouldn't like to be the one who would take away the livelihood of my relations as builders, so that wouldn't happen. So, but I just think the way this 3 years, I think it's okay with an external assessment process and put more rigour around that, and I think that would...
more rigour
by more
around-
rigour, I mean somebody completely independent of this community,
Yeah.
I think, is what we should be looking at. And perhaps it should be maybe some solicitors from another town, I'm not too sure, but it certainly shouldn't be handled anywhere near this town, so, or this shire, so...
Thank you. Well, that's, Councillor Oliver, yes, what I was saying in my remarks, that as part of my deliberations, that that was what I thought on reflection, that we didn't probably tease out as well as we should have in relation to the external assessment process. And I think that, Mr General Manager, just seeking your views, if would you see the external assessment process in terms of that rigour? You're thinking that, I know that's very broad, but do you have any advice in relation to how that could be enhanced, if that was an option that Council wanted to consider?
Not really, Mr Mayor. The assessment is really one of a financial nature, based on affordability by council, and I guess there's two parts to it. There's affordability by council, and secondly, the necessity in terms of economic development. The correct people to undertake an external assessment on that, I'm not altogether sure who we'd be talking about, because the skill sets are not necessarily a legal skill set. Yeah, I can't really give you any advice. I'd have to think more about that.
Okay, thank you. For example, Council, there's an argument to that, with saying external assessment process. You know, again, we're all proud of our REROC organisation, but again, you know, do we think that that's too close to Council? Because again, we're members. You know, if there were, again, you could interpret that different ways as well. So we need to go further external in terms of transparency. The Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe, I'm interested in the General Manager's views, but whether this be deferred until this maybe a bit more legal advice be received around which way to go here, because obviously it's just two very different opinions, or at least very different opinions in the room, and yeah, maybe we need a bit more advice on this, what is not legal, but what is, you know,
Well, what options? And,
yeah.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I go to Councillor McLaren.
I'd be very happy to seek some independent advice on the way forward for Council to remain transparent and independent in its decision making without restricting important developments as they arise. So yes, I'd be happy to hear that advice.
Thank you. So the General Manager.
I was just going to say, Mr Mayor, I think the key issue here is to decide what the gateway decisions are. And then, you know, as finance is one of them, which is really an internal council matter, but there's also the planning and the economic development issues that could be done externally by, you know, an environmental consultant or someone like that. But, yeah, I think we just need to look at the rigour around that.
Thank you. So therefore, Councillor Judd.
Yeah, I support the Council Oliver in, you know, beefing up that external assessment process, and we've done a few external assessment processes in the past, but I don't think the general public knows what's been happening. And I think if we're going to go down that way, we must make sure that the public know what's going on and how it's been handled, so that, you know, as Councillor Oliver said, it's got to pass the pub test eventually, you know. So yeah, so that's my worry about it.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Councillor Judd. Well, councillors, we still have a motion, I have to say, that Councillor McLaren and Councillor Judd have, and that is that we accept clause 3 as written on page 108. Do they wish to withdraw?
I'm happy to withdraw if someone has an alternative.
Okay. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor.
Okay. I'd like to move that we defer decision on clause 3 until further advice is received on how. Yeah.
So
On how the external assessment can be undertaken, you know.
Yep.
Okay, so you're going to move an amendment.
Well, no.
Okay, well, it was going to have to be amendment if they weren't going to withdraw. So you're, Councillor McLaren and Councillor Judd, you're withdrawing your motion. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor?
Yep.
So the Deputy Mayor has moved that Council defers a decision on clause 3 of the notice of motion until further advice or should we say professional or independent? Further independent advice is received on how the external assessment could or should be conducted. So the Deputy Mayor has moved that way. Second, Councillor Judd, moved and seconded. Further discussion. Councillor Slay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that picks it up very well. What we are after is to make sure that our council is seen as people who are moral people who are doing the right thing, not trying to rip off their neighbour. I believe we've got a very good reputation in our town, but unfortunately from time to time you hear grumbles, oh, so-and-so did so-and-so. We know that's part of human nature, but it's I think that further examination does need to go into this matter, and I'm rather excited, I must admit, to think that this particular motion, which I thought was very well worded when I came in here this afternoon, has been taken to pieces, and the mover has said, look, I think we've got to do something to make it a better motion. So by all means, let's go ahead with it, and hopefully it'll be done sooner rather than later, but it's obviously not going to be done in the next month either. And it won't be done before our famous meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Slay. It could be. I mean, I'm thinking, I don't want the General Managers thinking different options. I mean, we pay a lot of money to be members of LGNSW. They have a strong law team there, which we could perhaps access, Mr General Manager, and perhaps others. So, so there may be something back for us in November, you never know. Thank you, Councillor Say. Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'm very happy with that result. My intent was to stimulate discussion, and this matter has caused me some concern, and I think that further investigation will tighten up the policy to everyone's satisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren, and I know that, again, in our earlier conversations that you wanted to stimulate debate, discussion and hear what your colleagues had to say. And it's been a good, genuine discussion, and I thank councillors for that. So if there's no further discussion on the motion that's before you, Resolution 290-2021, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Judd have moved that Council defers a decision on Clause 3 of the Notice of Motion until further independent advice is received on how the external assessment should be conducted. So if there's no further discussion, I will put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very, very much. Councillors, let's go to page 110, 15.2. Further notice of motion in relation to the Master Plan Lakes and Tenery. And Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, this relates to a matter earlier in the business papers about a master plan for Lakes and Tenery. I just have great concerns about entertaining ideas of providing cabins and accommodation at Lakes and Tenery. I think I think there's probably a very good business case from a economic and a tourism perspective for caravans and cabins out there. I think, I think the EDO's done his job to promote our town and provide that option. But I think looking at the public interest and the treasured spot that Lake Centenary has in our community's heart and the value they place on that open space out there and the accessibility and the beauty and equality of access for that whole area, I think that we don't want to be going down the track of providing cabins on the edge of Lake Centenary. And I understand if you just say 6 today, then in a few years' time you'll say another 6, and then in a few years' time, and there'll always be a business case to support that. It'll be tourism, visitations, jobs. But I think public space with land prices and the pressure on the land for recreational space and the cost of acquiring it for future public space, we need to hold off onto whatever we've got now and treasure it and, put the public interest first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. So you're moving your notice of motion that is on the top of page 111, that the proposed master plan development for Lake Centenary exclude in its scope the provision of accommodation at Lake Centenary. Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Reinhold. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Further discussion on the notice of motion. I go to Councillor Winkie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having thought about this after our last meeting and, at the committee day, and I sort of went away and did think about it, and I seemed to come up with the idea that, if we go down this track, how do we stand on for a start, Crown land that's actually for recreation area, and also for putting that type of thing on it. But I can see down the track that we'd end up having to put a manager out there to control it. And we're going to start to run into more and more money involved in running something like that. And look, I'm of the same opinion as Councillor McLaren in that I think it would spoil the area for what we've got now.
Thanks very much, Councillor Winkie. Further discussion on the motion, the Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, at the end of the day, that might happen that there wouldn't be any accommodation or anything like that out there, but I think it's too early to be putting conditions around what may or may not be out there. I just think, this is just to get some ideas together and then see how it all might fit together. And look, there's all different things that could happen different ways, as we've probably none of us have thought about. The idea of holiday cabins was only an example that's in the report. I don't know what else it could be, but I just think at this stage we shouldn't be saying no to things that we think mightn't fit around there when, it might. I just think there'll be a time later when we look at what comes back from the report and then, look at how it all might fit together and say, well, no, that doesn't fit in, and then and get some comments back from the community and so forth too. I think at this stage, I think everything should be in, and then make a decision later on.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a community lake, and I think, as Councillor Sinclair said, we sit here and make decisions for our community. I think on something like this, I think we should let the community make the decision, and I think it should be perhaps a question put in our next survey and see what they really think that whether this should go ahead or not. So, but I mean, I for one am not in favour of it, but I only represent my voice and perhaps my wife's. But I mean, I'd let the community make their decision on this one, see what they say.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Well, my response to that, though, would be is that we are elected by the community to make decisions that we believe are appropriate for Temora Shire. So on some issues, it might be appropriate to go out to the community, and we've done that on the odd occasion. But at the same time, my view is if this council has a mind to want to adopt this particular motion, then you're able to do so. If you don't wish to, then that's our job as elected leaders. We've got to present or deal with what's before us. So I think that's what our community would expect from their councillors after consideration of all the factors before them. Thanks, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Reinhold, was your... Oh, sorry.
Go.
Councillor Reinhold.
You spoke too long.
Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say we have 2 caravan parks, we have an RV park, we have the railway station, and I know they're RVs and caravans, but then we have people building cabins, and I just don't think that the lake and council, that it's warranted. It's a beautiful spot, so keep it as it is.
Thanks very much, Councillor Reinhold. Councillor Judd.
I just support those remarks. I think in the 40 years since the lake's been built, we've had the council of the days had a number of requests to put camping grounds or camping on it, and it's always been knocked back. And we even, when the jet boats wanted to camp overnight, we didn't have to think long and hard about allowing that, which we did as a one-off thing. But I think, as Councillor McLaren said, this council has really done a great job on developing the Lake Centenary and the walk and everything. And I think we should preserve it the way it is. It's really done, looks great. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Judd. I must say I do agree with that. I know I've even spoken to the Temora Lake Development Committee chairman back in the day, former Councillor Brendan Fritsch, and I asked him his opinion with not any leading comments, and he categorically, Councillor Judd, as you've said, that we've been dealing with this for an extended period, and he was dead set against it. And I know that councils come and go, and views will, can change and evolve as well. But I also hark back to our former esteemed mayor and councillor, the late Peter James, who said to me in his nice way and gentle way, but firm nonetheless, that the parkland that we have, the few parks and the recreation areas that we have, once it's gone, it is gone. And that is the thing that has rung in my head when I first saw the report. And of course, we're all keen about this master plan at Lake Centenary, and our economic development manager has been commended before and will be after for initiating this, which council are proceeding with. But in my view, it is a beautiful place. It is a recreational place, should not be commercialised. And I think that, to be frank, I think it would be very, very unwise, in my view, for us to be even entertaining heading down that path if that's what this council truly feels. And I think we have an obligation to knock it out if that's what we believe. However, if we think that it should be left in, then let's leave it in. But my view is let's leave that beautiful Lake Centenary alone in terms of accommodation provisions. Anyway, councillors, you have a motion before you that Councillor McLaren and Councillor Reinhold have moved. It is a notice of motion, so if there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion to you. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much, councillors. There's no further business with notice, unless we've misplaced something, Councillor McLaren. Nothing further in terms of notices of motion that we've missed. Anyway, thank you very much. Councillors, we go over to page 112, and we have business without notice, and I go to the Deputy Mayor. You're happy? Thank you. Go to Councillor Reinhold, business without notice. No, thank you. Councillor Judd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Teamwork at its
Thanks,
best.
Councillor Reinhold, for looking after me. Yeah, right. I was down at the Temora railway station the other day, and Councillor Reinhold grabbed me and said, "Come and have a look what we're doing." And he showed me progress on the model railway there, and also the new display cabinets. And anyway, I was very impressed, and congratulate Councillor Oliver and all the team at the railway here at Temora Railway, what they're doing. It's certainly developing into the next stage of a great tourist attraction. So well done.
Hear, hear.
Go on.
Thank you, Councillor Judd. Yeah, there's not much of a team up there though, but what we have, we really put in the time and the effort. So and it's good to get that feedback. But it does, from what we were given to start with, which was an empty shell, and to where we are now, and I must say we're not completely finished just yet. There's still a little bit more to go. But yeah, so it's been a big improvement to what was, well, particularly to what it was before council got involved and done the restoration work. So yeah, anyway, no, thank you, Councillor Judd.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Councillor Oliver, and thank you, Councillor Judd. Further items of business without notice?
As council's aware, we've started on process with a community strategic plan, and with our consultant Karen Legg, and anyway, she came out to Airy Park yesterday, and I raised a few groups to meet her. We had the men's shed in the morning, then the ladies group, and after school we had the young people at the skate park. And I was blown away myself, and I think Karen was too. But anyway, they thought a fair bit about what's needed in the future, and they come up with things like the shade area over that's needed, a bubbler, exercise equipment. A lot of these ones are in the pipeline anyway. But the one that really brought the house down was this little kindergarten young lady who says, "Can we have a river, please?" I'm serious.
Out of the mouths of babes.
Yes, and I must commend the way Karen operated. The kids just come up to her and go over all these ideas, I think it was a great exercise, and yes, so look forward to see some of these ideas coming through. So, yeah.
Exactly. Rivers. Got a lake, now they want a river.
Yes, my last question is probably to Director of Environmental Services, maybe even to... a lot of publicity last week about the state government and now encouraging outdoor alfresco dining. Wonder if you've got any latest on that, or whether it can apply to Temora or not?
Thank you. The Director?
There is an initiative through TBEG that's being, they're canvassing the local community about encouraging sort of alfresco dining and outdoor dining experiences. So I believe that's in the wind, and but certainly the state government's made it a lot easier. They've even applied some of the exempt development provisions where you don't even need council approval these days, but it's complicated with the council's alcohol-free zone and a relatively limited timeframes on trading for restaurants and cafes and pubs. So that's something that will be coming back to council in due course, so through TBEG.
That's all, Mr Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Judd. I now go to Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to inform Council that mid-year I had a lot going on in my life, but after thinking things over and a few things have settled down, I've decided to nominate on the electoral roll, and I've got my form here. So I was just going to let you all know that it's everyone's prerogative to change their mind, and I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring again. I'm very passionate about Temora Shire, and I don't always get things right, but I have a good go, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Now, let's go to Councillor Winky.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. It had a chap pulled me up down the street yesterday, and we had having a bit of a yarn, and it said, can I ask you whether you might be able to do something about the the state of the showers at the heated swimming pool. He's a constant user, but he said recently the showers haven't been very, very clean, and he's just wondering if there would any chance of them being sort of looked at a bit more often than what they are. So I did quiz him. I said, so what about the women's? And he looked at me and he said, I haven't been in there. I said, I'm pleased to hear that. So,
That's right.
so I don't know about that side of it. That might be investigated, but the men's is apparently hasn't been super clean of a morning, and he's down there around about 7 o'clock in the morning.
Thank you.
If we could have just look at that and just see if something can be rectified there, I think it'd be very much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Winky. The Director of Environmental Services, you've noted those comments, please.
Noted.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Winky. Anything further?
No, nothing further.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I now go to Councillor Oliver, business without notice.
Nothing, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Nothing. Thank you very much. Councillor Slay.
I was going to announce that I'm standing for the next election, but it'll take the cream off the last announcement, so I'll have to say nothing else.
Thank you, Councillor Slay. Councillor Smith.
All's good with me, thank you.
All's good. Thank you very much. Councillors, I had two things I would like to draw to your attention. One is from the Frankwood Masonic Homes. The Chief Executive has been talking to us on a very, very regular basis in relation to the, I suppose, called the new greenstone. You can remember the frustration that we've had when the new building next to Narraborough was we dug the first sod in February of 2020, ready to proceed on a $14 million project. And of course, you know, thanks to council with lobbying Mr McCormack, he allocated us over $3 million for that project, which was enabled it to proceed. And then, of course, with COVID, a month after the first sod has just, just changed things dramatically, and not for the better. That costs, of course, have gone up by millions of dollars, and they, as you would be aware, they applied under the Building Better Regions Fund from the federal government, of which the former Deputy Prime Minister, Mr McCormack, was the Minister in charge. Then, of course, when he was removed, that, of course, has a new minister in charge of it, and they were deemed unsuccessful. So I would like to read out the release that they have sent out today that I've been asked to read to you. The Widden Temora Aged Care project delayed. Widden has had to defer the Temora Aged Care expansion project after an application to the Commonwealth for additional capital funding to support the project was unsuccessful. Widden Temora's redevelopment project was deferred last year due to the significant operational and financial challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic that was compounded by shortfalls experienced by an already underfunded aged care sector. As a result, Widden applied for additional funding assistance through a new round of capital grants under the federal government's Building Better Regions Fund, as the not-for-profit aged care provider wanted to progress this project as quickly as possible. Widden Chief Executive Mr Chris Mammarella said that the outcome of the funding application is disappointing news for Widden and the Temora Shire community. However, Widden remains committed to delivering the project and will now begin to explore other alternatives in order to bring the project to life. Due to Widden's grant application being unsuccessful, we're unable to proceed with the redevelopment project at this point in time, as we are simply insufficiently funded to proceed. Like many other aged care providers, the pandemic has placed an immense amount of financial pressure on the organisation, compounding the significant funding shortfalls that already exist in aged care. While Widden does remain a secure and stable not-for-profit organisation, we simply cannot make the significant financial commitment required for a project of this magnitude in the current environment without the additional financial support, remembering that's that $5 million that they asked for extra. This is genuinely disappointing news for Widden, as I'm sure it is for the Temora Shire Council and community. A tremendous amount of work has been directed at this project since its inception a number of years ago. Throughout this period, we have worked closely with our local management team, Temora Shire councillors and staff, and Mayor Furman in our attempts to bring this project to fruition. Despite this setback, we remain committed to exploring other solutions, and we are by no means giving up hope. We know how important this project is to the Temora Shire community, which we have been proudly part of for more than 40 years, and we will begin to explore other funding avenues with all levels of government. We will also explore other options to fund the project and continue to work closely with the Temora Shire Council and the local community as we begin this process. It is important to highlight that despite this setback, our existing care services and operations at Widden Temora will not be disrupted in any way. We remain committed as ever to our Temora service, and we do the many other regional communities we service that are heavily subsidised by Widden, underpinning our commitment to regional Australia. So, councillors and staff, that is the statement by the Chief Executive Officer, and I've just been so grateful, I know the General Manager has been, that his constant communication with us has been outstanding, and I know he was very devastated when we were advised of the unsuccessful application, but they are still so hopeful. And the main thing is we cannot risk losing this other 3.4 million that we received for the original project. So they're looking at all options, which is, they're even considering looking at what they can do to enhance the existing greenstone. But anyway, let's see where they land, but at least they're still committed to something. So I needed to announce that to you this evening. And the other one that I had before we proceed to our information paper is...
Mr Mayor, a bit.
Sorry, Councillor Judd.
Just before you get off that,
Yep.
just so happens that yesterday in our community consultation, we had one resident who made a very strong point about we have to campaign to get a new Greenstone Lodge. She had a grandmother who has been on the waiting list for some time, and they said it was a real need for our shire to make sure we get this to happen. So, just saying.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Councillor Judd, because that's, again, what we need to be doing. I did say to Mr Mammarellis, as part of your board's deliberations, please continue to keep in touch with us because, if it comes to it, that this community, as a partner, needs to look at local fundraisers. I said that's something that we as a community will consider. So please keep talking to us. So anyway, at least that board is still 100% committed. So we'll just watch this space as developments unfold. And just lastly, councillors, the Federal Member for Riverina, the Honourable Michael McCormack MP, has just formally sent out information in relation to inviting community groups to participate in round 7 of the Stronger Communities program, the SCP, as opposed to the Stronger Country Communities program from the state. You just can't believe some of the goings on. But anyway, and of course, the program intends to encourage and support participation in local projects, improve local community participation and contribute to vibrant and viable communities. There's a fund of 150,000 projects that may be included: fit out of community centres, kitchens, upgrades, equipment, purchasing computers, furniture, TVs, fittings, sporting facility upgrades, including scoreboards, barbecues, etc. Which, anyway, applications close on would you believe, would you believe that they close on a date, the 15th of November, thank you. It's not even on the flipping letter. No, it's not. It's not, which is odd. It's got the 31st of December here, but that's not right. Anyway, councillors, there is information here that I'll table for anyone that if you have anything in your various groups and networks that you get about with. Expressions of interest is the first stage until the 3rd of December. Yeah, 3rd of December, and a consultation committee will help Mr McCormack assess those who express an interest and then go to them and ask them to fill out an application. So you know how that program works. So that information is here with some expression of interest forms attached if you would like. Thank you. Councillor McLaren.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, was
Yes.
that program open to the local councils or only local
I
organisations?
understand, thank you Councillor McLaren, I do understand, Mr General Manager, it is open to councils.
It is?
Yes. Thank you. So maximum of 20 projects per electorate can be funded, not exceeding 150,000, and I think that talking around $2,000, what is it, $2,000 minimum, $2,500 to $20,000 grants will be available between. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. So I'll table that for you. So there's no further business without notice. A motion receiving the information paper, please. Deputy Mayor, thank Councillor Judd. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you very much. Councillor, is there any items in the information paper, please? If not, in accordance with Section 10A of the Local Government Act, I advise that there are several matters that are deemed confidential, and accordingly I require a motion to have those matters considered. Thank you. The Deputy Mayor, Councillor Oliver, moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. And thank members of the gallery and the press for their perseverance. Thank you very much, councillors. We resume into open council. And I would now like to ask council if you would please adopt the motions that have been brought forward from confidential into open council, please. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Smith, thank you. Moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. The contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. I actually think that should be the other way around. The resolutions first, then adopt them. Yeah, that's right. I'm saying that we should read them first, then adopt them. Well, that's not what's on here. So we need to update that, please. So, councillors, can I advise that the following motions have been moved into confidential section of council. That was on the motion of the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Oliver that we moved into confidential, and that was carried. And we have moved into confidential at 6:57 p.m. Minutes of the Assets and Operations Committee on the 12th of October 2021. The motion of Councillor Winkie and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that the reports be received. The motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Winkie and the Deputy Mayor, it was resolved that the reports and recommendations as presented be adopted, and the motion was carried. Staff incentive. On the motion of Councillor Winkie and Councillor Judd, it was resolved that Council offer the relevant staff incentive as follows: a team dinner for those involved in the project and their partners, and a gift voucher for the 3 staff mainly involved in the project, and the motion was carried. Proposed business in Hoskin Street. On the motion of Councillor Winkie and the Deputy Mayor, it was resolved that Council advise the potential purchaser that a development application will need to be lodged, and further, that the development application should ensure that the proposal submitted for assessment should ensure the heritage integrity of the facade is preserved, that no further mechanical repair workshop to operate within the premises, and Council's requirement is for rear vehicular access, and the motion was carried. Plant replacement front end loader. On the motion of Councillor Winkie and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that Council award the tender to Westtrack Wagga Wagga for the Caterpillar wheel loader for $289,020 exclusive of GST, and the motion was carried. Unnamed road access. On the motion of the Deputy Mayor and seconded Councillor Winkie, it was resolved that Council remove the gates and the fence back to the road reserve boundary on the unnamed road, and further, that 7 days' notice is given to all parties of the intention to remove the gates, and the motion was carried. Sundry debtors, write-offs 2021, on the motion of Councillor Slay and Councillor Smith, it was resolved that Council writes off the fees and charges as listed, and the motion was carried. Temora Flyers, on the motion of the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Winkie, it was resolved that Council be responsible for $1,082.54, comprising the standing charge of $664.30 and half of the usage charges of $418.24, with the Temora Flyers to pay the balance of $418.25, and the motion was carried. On the motion of Councillor Smith and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that Council moves the motions from closed business into open council. And on the motion of Councillor Winkie and Councillor Oliver, it was resolved that Council moves out of closed council at 8:51 p.m. and into open council, and that motion was carried. So may I now please receive a motion to formally adopt those confidential resolutions? Thank you, Councillor Reinhold. Councillor Judd moved and seconded. All those of that opinion, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Declare the motion carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. So can we just change the order of that, please? Thank you. It's just, turning them. Now, councillors, I am in receipt of a rescission motion, and that the resolutions relating to Teabeg and the Area Park Christmas tree be rescinded, and that has been signed by Councillor McLaren, Councillor Sinclair and Councillor Reinhold. So we are in receipt of that rescission motion. So, Mr. General Manager, I take your advice in relation to how to handle that?
Yes, that will go to the next meeting. And if that's passed, then it sets aside the decision and then a new decision would be made.
So this is all we've had to do is to announce it?
Correct, and we will provide a report on the issue for the next meeting.
Thank you. So thank you very much. Is there any further business? If not, thank you very much for your attendance, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.